Welcome back to Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom, part of the Migration Media Network. I'm Brendan Davis, your host, and this week's guest is Gianluigi Perrone, an Italian filmmaker who I'll tell you more about in just a few minutes here. Before we get into it, I wanted to give you a few updates from my world that I thought were maybe funny or interesting, or if nothing else, give me a chance to get this off my chest, because it's been a pretty crazy few days. Basically, the show is late this week, very late, 3 days, technically. I'm publishing this on early Saturday morning Beijing time, but with good reason. You may or may not have noticed that. But I have been, just for the last many weeks now, I've been on what we call editorial lockdown. So my day basically revolves around one editing program or another and several computers to manage one of these 5 ongoing projects that I'm involved in between film and TV and web stuff. And juggling these priorities it's a constant reality, and managing the workflow in and out of different projects is this skill that I've had to develop, and people do this kind of thing do it. And basically, for the highest priority video project that I had at the moment, I had this delivery planned for Wednesday night. Not the final, fortunately, but something that I said, hey, I'll send you this over. It should be by Wednesday night. And I chose the date. So that's what saved me here, frankly, because, it was something that was not client dependent. It was something that I'd set, but still, it's a goal, and I blew right past it. So let me tell you how that happened. It's kind of funny. That is the same day, by the way, that I typically edit this show in the morning and then post it in the evening. Do you see where this is going? So as background, most of us, me, you, everybody we know, has stayed up like really late to get a term paper written or get a class project completed, or especially here in China, to create an entirely new spreadsheet or presentation before work the next day because your boss or coworkers drop some surprise on you right as you're getting ready to leave the office, right? So without getting too technical or long-winded about it, if it's not too late for that already, my version of all that is that on the computer that I'm using for this particular edit, this very sophisticated but processor-intensive software that I'm using just totally melted down under the actual workload. And look, I've went through all the steps that anyone who knows what they're doing would do here, I think, and the only answer ended up being to install a completely different program and rebuild the entire thing from scratch. Now, video editing nerds out there who want the details can buy me a beer, and I'll tell you why all the usual bright ideas that you'll probably suggest either did not or wouldn't work in this case. The upshot of all this is that instead of coasting into my delivery window with hours to spare, as I had planned, and then cutting this show, I ended up being all night Wednesday night, worked all day yesterday. Then I was up until 3 a.m. this last morning getting everything output and uploaded and such. 45 hours of almost nonstop work and zero sleep, not 1 second. Now, it's really funny. I slept in today, and then a delivery guy woke me up banging on the door. And from the look on this poor guy's face, I think that my slept-on long hair, growing out beard, no shirt, and only underwear look answering the door in a coma was one that he will never forget. It was pretty funny, to tell you the truth, although I do hope that he can get over the trauma. Anyway, to bring all this back around to the guest, I did some self-carry stuff today, basically. Lots of coffee, walk in the sun, late lunch, about half a day's worth of just kind of laying on the couch. And I finally had the energy to get into this edit earlier this evening. And as soon as I did, wow, I went through an 8-day period back in July where I interviewed something like 7 people, including one group episode. And I am stacked up for a while, which is great. And I knew this was a good one. I knew it was a long interview, and I know that we got into a bunch of stuff. This week's guest, Gianluigi Perrone, has been on my wish list ever since I first had the idea for the show, and we finally made it happen. He is an Italian writer, director, and producer. He's something of a Renaissance man, although I'm sure he would hate me for saying that. He has been an author, the screenwriter of a cult film called Moraturus, a film critic, editor of an Italian genre journal called Nocturno, a director or producer of occult projects like The Seventh Night of Thelema, as well as family films, and he's now a pioneering director and creator of VR projects here in China, and he applies this passion and training he has in neuroscience, of all things, to his cinematic efforts. He's had this wide and varied career, and he has been mentored by or significantly crossed paths or worked with cinema legends like Argento, Bava, Jodorowsky, Tarantino, and he's just a fascinating guy to chat with. I don't see him that often. What's funny is whenever we sit down, several hours pass and I barely even notice. We talked for over an hour before we started this interview. Then we recorded for an hour and a half, and then we talked another hour afterward. It is always a blast to see him, and there are far more funny stories here than in the usual episode, but his experiences and insights on the state of the film market here and what he thinks about the shift to longer-term thinking in China and business planning is going to mean for all of us is gold. One hint he dropped is to read The Art of War, but there's a lot more to it than that, so buckle in and enjoy this interview with Gianluigi Perrone. I am glad to welcome to the show someone I wanted to have on since I met him, and we finally get to do it. Gianluigi Perrone. How are you, John?
Oh, it's okay. Thank you very much for inviting.
Well, and I hope that pronunciation was not totally horrible.
Perfect.
You're too kind.
And it's not really easy to pronounce the name. Again, I used to say that even my mother doesn't remember it. Sometimes she called me Francesco.
Nice. Well, for the sake of the audience, please give us the short version. My typical first question is give us the short version of who you are, where you're from, and for you, why China, and then we will get into the details. You have a lot to talk about today.
Well, I'm Italian. I'm from South Italy, but I've been living in Rome most of my career. So I've been working in film since 15 years, pretty several levels. I started my career first in TV shows and as an author. And then I've been a film critic, writer, and then I set my production company. We've been doing genre films for the international market. At the time in Italy, horror, science fiction barely disappeared, because of political reasons. So we've been the new generation in some way, getting international and doing something that was having festivals and good release, again. So, yeah, and then, a few years ago I moved to China. And I used to say that it's for the poetic reason of love and the less poetic reason of money.
Both are equally valid, I think.
Yeah. It's been a good choice. I finished a film with Alejandro Jodorowsky at the time, and my girlfriend at the time, she had to move in China as she's a sinologist. So I was thinking what to do. It was the kind of moment that what is going to happen next, because I had a couple of other projects there in my country that we actually did. And for me, it was pretty challenging, of course, to manage everything from another country. But at that moment, I said, okay, let's try it. Let's try to do it. And I wanted to explore more the Asian market, which I knew just, externally. Mm-hmm. So this has been a good move. Of course, it didn't happen all of a sudden. It took me 1 year to coming back, meeting the right people, and then I did my first Chinese film as an executive producer, Yan Meizhou, Song of Silence, and that's been successful. That's been the start for my film career here in China.
Excellent. And so we will not go through every milestone, but you've had a lot of them, and some of them are too interesting to pass up. So what was your first entree into passion for film specifically? Like, how did you catch that interest in that bug?
Oh, well, I can tell you a personal story, when my brother was born, I'm the first one, we moved to a bigger house. And it was in the neighbors. And the only thing that was close to my place, I was like 10, 11. Yeah. It was a video shop, the classic video shop.
Yeah. The old school. You get the rows of shelves and you see all the titles and the artwork. And it's like, wow, what's this?
VHS. I was always there, and I had passion for horror films. And then, my passion for films evolved, indeed. I have to say that my academic studies, they have nothing to do with cinema. I'm a son of doctors, so they want me to become a doctor. And so in some direction, I went to do studies that were closer to my attitude. So I studied psychoanalysis, I studied neurosciences.
Oh, great.
And there have been, of course, music, art, and films, they were an hobby. So when it happened that this hobby has become a job, then I decided to quit, the direction. To transform it, actually, because then later on, the studies has been really helpful for the work as a writer.
Sure.
And now when we are going to talk about the virtual reality activity, it's been really, neuroscience actually has been perfect. So in some way, I tend to be fatalist and to see that there was a plan of the universe to go in that direction. And so this has been my first steps into films, as a lover. And then, I've been exploring more and more. And then I decided, said, okay, let's try to do what we want to do.
Nice. Well, basically everyone that I get to talk to for this, the shape of each show, there's certain similarities, of course, and then the meat of the sandwich, as it were, varies from guest to guest depending on how much or how little they have to say about past, present, or their thoughts about the future. You have what I know of, and from knowing you as a friend, the times we've had to socialize and talk about things, you have a really interesting past. But I mean, you've done so much work, and you have so much going on now, and the kind of work you're doing is really geared toward the future because you're someone who's really at this forefront of pushing VR, and so I want to get there. I don't want to start there right away because I don't want to miss things that are more relevant. But let's talk just a little bit about sort of your career highlights, basically, up to this point, and then I want to get into your thoughts about the market, how we got where we are, and then what's next. But just for the sake of people listening who aren't familiar with you and your work, I mean, you've ticked off a lot of boxes. What would you say was really kind of got you established in terms of like actually filmmaking stuff?
Okay. Well, actually, the two things are related. I have to say, I really remember the times, we were part of a circle that was related to the magazine where I was writing. One of the magazines I was writing on. I've been editor-in-chief as well. And this magazine is called Nocturno. We've been doing a lot of researches, It was kind of important. It's like a sort of Fangoria, but going way more deeper. And because we are there in Italy, we were cooperating with the Venice Film Festival a lot of times for doing, when there has been the retrospective about the Italian Giallo, the retrospective about spaghetti western with Quentin Tarantino. We work with Quentin directly,
Right.
And it was like the Godfather in some situation, but then the dirty work, I will not call it dirty work, but that was, of course, a pleasure, but this has been my life. And we realized that this was, the great times of my of my country, in terms of filmmaking. The 50s, 60s, and 70s, that's been great for Italy. And I had the honor to know and talk with so many of these, old directors, Dario Argento, of course, Lamberto Bava, which is the son of Mario Bava, which influenced a lot Tim Burton. Sure. And some of my mentors has been Enzo G. Castellari, which is the guy that did the original Inglourious Basterds, Umberto Lenzi, Sergio Martino, Ruggero Deodato. These old guys,
sure.
Some of them... they are in heaven now or in hell, I don't know. It depends. But they're really pretty interesting person, really interesting personalities, and at the same time they've been, they're really talkative. So they teach me a lot. Mostly, for example, Castellari. They like to explain the way they were making movies, and with some friends, we realized that there was an whole. In the Italian cinema, and we wanted to make our own films. So at the beginning we say, okay, let's do it. Let's do. Maybe it was going to be the first and the last one because nobody did it. So we start to work on a project which actually I can tell you it became a cult because my first film Morituris, which started from indeed a silly idea. Let's make a film in Rome, a horror film with the gladiators, which actually then we realized it's a really strong concept. Actually, I can tell you that we've been talking with Hollywood because they wanted to remake the film at a certain point, But at the time, we just wanted to do something really crazy, and the film came out like one of the most violent in the 20 years, and the film has been banned in my country. It's been released all over the world, included in the US. Synapse released the film, and it's really good for that kind of exploitation film.
Say the title slowly.
Oh yeah, the title is in Latin. It's a Latin word, and it's the word that the gladiator used to say in front of the emperor, which is Morituris te salutant. The film is called Morituris, which means the one who are gonna die.
Oh, okay.
So we start from that idea. At the time, the French they were doing, these exploitation films with some art house elements, and I'm the writer of the film and one of the producers.
Okay.
I really wanted to push something political,
Yeah.
And so we went in the direction of Pasolini, and it is infamous Salò. And I'm really proud because actually somebody compared the film to that one.
Very nice.
And okay, to touch some kind of arguments that they were hot in my country. So, that has been the first step. And again, because the film became quite popular internationally, then I started to make more, and then I did another film with Jodorowsky. Then in the meanwhile, I was starting to think to move to China, and then I did a couple of other films in Italy that they were horror films, but completely different. There is one called Across the River, and probably it's the most successful film that I did. It's been, it's Netflix now. It's been released also here in China. That's been quite weird, and it's more like a ghost story, But always we try to put some. I would say European elements, some art house elements. I don't like to say art house. I don't think there is a line in between, But indeed, it's just a different background that we have in making movies, and so in this way, we got some interest, getting a lot of festivals. Also for us as European, it's always honor, when we get released in the United States, even if it's a small release,
Sure,
but you see maybe the films that they are great for you, so they go in the US. And then these things happened when I was already in China. And then we did a film called Eva Brown, and it's about it's not even a genre film. I don't know how to define it. There is a lot of sex, and it's a film about the sex scandals that has been happening in Italy with the former Prime Minister Berlusconi.
Oh,
yes.
All right.
So actually it's interesting because this year came out a film called Loro, means them, from Paolo Sorrentino, which is he won the Oscar for The Great Beauty, which is it's really similar. Of course, they have different. It's a different industry. With Paolo, of course, is on the top, But the attitude has been the same, and I noticed, that he might took some ideas from our vision. So, what I wanted to do, actually, what I noticed is that my career has been pushed by the idea of being in some way disrupting or exploring new things.
Yeah.
I tend to say, just not to be arrogant or whatever, but you need to know yourself. You need to know your limits. Then you understand which one are your skills. I'm Italian. I don't know how to play football at all. So this might be frustrating. So okay, football is
that's not on the list.
That's not my thing, But I can tell you that I'm good in forecasting the future, to try to understand how does it work. And also when we be shooting our first film, in some way what happened has been that we've been between the first, at least there in Europe, to work with the digital cameras.
Okay.
So this leads me to what I've been always doing. So at the time of the Gladiator film, Morituri's, we shot with this a red camera. At the time, it was really new. Actually, I've been talking with Ted Shilovitz, which now works for Paramount as a futurist for virtual reality.
Right.
And he became popular because partnering with James Cameron, they created the business of the red cameras, which has been the first one being able to bring digital into mainstream films.
Right.
So Morituri's has been the first European film entirely shot in red.
Really? Okay.
And
back before there was even like a established workflow, and everybody's trying to figure out how do we deal with this and what's the best way to manage this.
It has been complicated.
That would be a little too down the rabbit hole for a general audience. But yeah, film people will. Film people just tip their hat to you because they realize.
I mean, actually,
if you're a pioneer in that world, any kind of pioneer in that world is
at
like
least in my
a lot
area.
Of scars.
Of course, we were looking what was happening in the U.S., but at least in Europe, we've been. We can say we've been the first one, and we created this relationship with the Red cameras. The company from Red, So the film with Jodorowsky Ritual has been done. It's the first one made in Epic, and I've been always working with the Red cameras.
Okay.
Actually, still now, I use the Dragons when I shoot in virtual reality. in the green screen room. So this has been a good relationship and a good exploration of new technology. Of course, you see the limits, but when you also for the technology, when you understand the limits, you understand also the potential. Mm-hmm. And now, I mean, films doesn't exist anymore. It's pretty weird. It would be interesting to try to make a VR film in films,
you want to do that?
I was thinking about a spaghetti western thing, something like that, but that's just a weird idea. But yeah, I mean, then the way that digital cinema has been coming along, and it changed the structure of narrative and the way of filmmaking. It has been a massive change, along with the internet. So, this has been influencing our life. And what I consider really often is that we often tend to think to classic films, for having references. But that time doesn't exist anymore.
Sure.
So there might be some rules that are still there for the editing, for the storytelling itself, but for the production, that time has gone forever.
Right. Yeah, well, and this is part of what I think is an interesting point that you can really contribute to for the sake of the show. But because I know how much you are interested in pushing the envelope of what's possible, and you like to color outside the lines. It's like, lines? What lines? Let's blur those lines. What has been the most important realization for you about how to work in China? We'll do a little bit of a China specific piece of this conversation, and then we'll zoom back out to your career in general, because it kind of goes everywhere. But what have you seen in the last few years here? Let me ask you a slightly better version of that question. What have you seen as far as the changes, and of course how the industry is maturing here, slowly, but it's happening. Progress is inevitable. What have you seen, and what do you see the big growth opportunity is? We'll say it that way.
Okay. As every foreigner in general in every industry that want to approach China, it's a pretty weird place, with a lot of secrets.
Exactly.
That's the first things you need to understand. I've been visiting here in 2006 first, just as a tourist. Okay. And I realized, that this was the place where soon there will be, a lot of money, And, when you come here, you understand there is not so much know-how. In some way, I've been pretty lucky, because since the beginning I met the right people. Mm-hmm. And my director Gianluigi is still one of my best friends. He teaches at Cava, and actually I can tell you I learned more from the mistakes than from the successes, as always.
We always do, yeah. So like, this is how not to do that.
Indeed, that's wisdom.
I add to that ledger for me pretty much every time I do something. Yeah.
And I think this is really important for the bridging in China, because a lot of people come here and a lot of companies, I've been bridging a lot for distribution, for the festivals, mostly in the 2 years that I've been working with the European Union delegation, for the festival. And then, of course, I've been talking with the sales agencies, and we were bringing the first deal for iQIYI, Le TV, and then there is other companies like Virtual Cinema, that they've been buying everything, It was pretty weird, this last year I was in Spain with a French sales agent, a friend, we were dining, and he told me, oh my God, there is a company there buying everything. And what's the name? Virtual Cinema, and these people has been introduced by me in the international market. So in some way I'm proud, it's besides the money, I'm happy, because this has been the first steps that the Chinese market has to do to understand how does it work internationally. And in terms of production, I learned a lot from co-production, which is something that is very dangerous.
Yes.
And a lot of people is afraid, to be, in that situation, because sometimes, there is it's really incompatible. It's not possible to work.
Exactly.
There is things that are not possible. When somebody now comes to me, they say, "Do you think we can make something in China?" It just depends.
Yeah.
You need flexibility and patience, and you need to understand that they are not ready yet, probably, and so they need to trust you. I'm really simple. My producer has been bringing me project from Hollywood, and huge project. And they wanted to find the money in 10 days, to find the Chinese partner in 10 days, which is pretty weird. I said, okay, no, this is not possible. Just because Chinese people, you need to go to hit them 25 times before it happened. But besides this, the thing is that the Chinese business works with different logics.
Exactly.
And so you need to learn that logics and try to understand where there is the danger and when there is the fertile ground, for doing something. And I can tell you that with experience, I've been able. Chinese people, Chinese companies, they tend to search for control. They're obsessed by control.
Yeah.
And but if you know how does it work their game, which actually is pretty. I'm going to say something really important in this moment for anybody that want to make business in China.
Pay attention. Okay,
so
I'm listening. I'm recording you, so I've got. I don't have to make a note. I'm recording it. But
by
please.
The Heart of War. The book, the rules, the 36 rules, it's all there. Just read it with an open mind. It's all there. So when you understand that rules, which they go through a completely different logic from you understand also how to manipulate Chinese partners, Indeed, you just have to find a place in between where their interest and your interest matched. Some of my partners now that they belong to the governments, they tell me, okay, we are going to do a salon. It's about the Olympic Games. I don't have anything to do with the Olympic Games at all. They say, okay, maybe there is something in VR that match with that. They say, okay, let's try to think about it. Sometimes it's pretty weird and sounds like a waste of time, but indeed this is the kind of things that they give you results here. It's funny because, there is a friend of mine who used to say, maybe sometimes you start here in China to make a movie and then you open a restaurant.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense understanding China if you have not been through that process here. Indeed. It just sounds funny, but I get that.
It is.
I understand that.
It is provocative. Indeed, I think that the right way, and indeed, I learned from bad experiences because I wanted to be strict, or I needed to be strict in co-production mostly.
Yeah.
So you were bringing Chinese partner, and I realized that besides the fact that they wanted to do something dirty, the thing is that I ain't been able to flow into their way, and which means that you can keep on doing whatever they want, because really often the big production companies, they don't care about the creative result. It means doesn't mean that they want to make a bad film.
Right.
It means that they don't care if it's a good or a bad film. So this leads what I'm doing now, and I think I'm one of the few foreigners living in China having complete creative control, just because on the rules I don't touch anything that is sensitive or anything that may compromise the way they want to work in their own companies. Talking about my Chinese producer. Yeah. So they do. If you don't touch anything that is going to be a problem for us, you can do whatever you want. And it's better to also being able to control the production, which this is the complicated thing, in my opinion. If we want to talk in terms of what I learned, in the in the
yeah, there are a lot of film and TV people, both here and people who want to work here. There's a pretty big film savvy, like really film savvy group of listeners. So yeah, anything that's actionable or practical, Share it.
Yeah, practical. Yes, sometimes when I hear myself talking about this, which is pretty common,
I can't imagine that. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like everywhere is the same. Actually, everywhere is basically the same. It's just the way and the logic behind it is a little bit different. So for managing the production here, sometimes it can be even more simple. You just have to consider that in China they're less straight than before. I can tell you something is also political. In China there has been a lot of changes in the government since several years, but since there is the new government by President Xi, it's a really positive thing. In some way, let's think in terms of business now that we know that President Xi is going to be, let's say, president for life. It's not true, actually. He's going to be president as long as there will be the raising of the economy. Right. But of course, he wants the raising of the economy, and entertainment is a huge part of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if we keep on going in this direction, people in China, people that is established, they know that they don't have the risk that tomorrow things are going to change.
Right.
So why usually we have the problem as producer in China that today they make a decision, the day after tomorrow they change completely their mind? Because they are used to change their mind. They are used to say, okay, let's grab the money now, run away because we don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. Now they know that tomorrow there's going to be the same person there in the...
Yeah.
And so, the connection, the structure of society is going to be pretty always the same. When they get used to that, Chinese companies, they will be more brave, they will be more challenging, they will risk more. And when they will risk more, which is going to happen soon because of political reason, they are going to start making movies for the international market because they could afford the resources, which is not only money, but also the fact to face the international market. In the moment, and this is the art of war, that United States and Europe, they are falling apart.
Yeah.
So, this is what I learned from the history of this country and also, from the tradition, they have. This has been really, really helpful in some way.
Well, I especially appreciate what you just said and how you said it, because a lot of people talk about these changes in ways that, it's without that kind of a perspective and understanding. Basically, what I'm getting at here is that, so your feeling is that the industry, the entertainment industry specifically here, will standardize and normalize, and people will have more long-term, thinking. They will be more tolerant of risk, and that your thinking is as people who interface with the institutions realize, oh, that same person's going to be there. He or she's going to be in that same company. Like this, there's consistency. So there's not the grab and go. It removes the imperative, and that's what I'm hopeful for. Is that the people who have the grab and go mentality, and change your mind, like I change my socks, which is to say at least once a week.
There is a reason behind it. There is a cultural reason, but there is also political reason. I mean, when you're established. We all experience working in China in every business that they change their mind really often. Also because the people change. Now I have this connection with this company, it's good, whatever it is. And then you meet the person after 1 month, and this literally happened a lot of times.
Yeah.
Actually, recently. And this person comes to you, I'm not working anymore for that company. Now I'm working with these people. I say, oh my God.
Yeah.
Now I have to start everything from the beginning.
Exactly.
And we were supposed to make that. This is what happened, and they do it just because, look at their history. They couldn't really believe that we are going to be there.
Couldn't count on something. There wasn't the feeling of security. Yeah, it ultimately comes down to security.
Exactly.
And feeling that you have that confidence comes from a sense of security. It's just like with a small child or a puppy or whatever. If you want a calm dog, you have to give them a sense of security.
Exactly.
And I'm not comparing people to dogs. That's just that's a lame
No,
metaphor,
I mean,
but it works.
It's a good metaphor, actually. It's a good metaphor, actually. And I'm not saying that this doesn't happen in Europe. I mean, I think one of the things that helped me to be flexible is that I did my career. I started my career in films in Rome, which is basically hell.
I had an Italian partner who's still a good buddy, Max Bartoli, and he's Roman, and started his career there. And I've been there. I've been to Cinecittà, and I've met a lot of the people in the industry there from him, and lovely people, amazing, amazing
good food,
city. Oh my God, the food, the wine, the scenery,
but everything can happen.
Yeah, well, and I think, look, I'm curious. Let's flip back to the more personal for a moment, and then we'll zoom more into the future, the present, and the near present, the near future. Do you think that being Italian and being raised, not trying to get too geopolitical, but I see a parallel. I've had a few other friends here specifically from Western Europe, really specifically more from Italy, who seem more able to navigate the waters here in China. And my thought, I want to get your take on it. Do you think that you're basically the chaos, frankly, the beautiful chaos of Italy? Do you think that prepared you for dealing with the different kind of seeming chaos in China? Because there is this underlying different logic. There is a rationale for what seems extraordinarily arbitrary to us as Westerners until you start to get it. You're one of the people who gets it. Do you think that helped? How did you get this way? I mean, yeah, you're a smart guy and you have an academic background, blah, blah. Do you think being Italian somehow prepared you for this?
Well, we used to say that Chinese people, they are from Naples.
Okay. What does that mean I get it a little bit. What does that mean?
In Naples, they have their own rules, and they behave really, really close to the one that sometimes I see in Chinese people. But again, China is a continent, and so people from Yunnan is different from people from Hebei, and
exactly.
different from. So we cannot generalize. Of course, there is a cultural framework that defines us, and I think that coming from South Italy and the fact that I needed to survive. I mean, you even if I come from a decent family, but I can tell that in some way there is one moment of your life, if you want to do what you want, you need to survive. And in films has been also struggling, so this probably helped to be flexible. I'm not really classical Italian person, but of course when you are in an international environment, you realize more, the things that define you. Also, you have to remember culturally, and I will not say, Italians are not really nationalistic. Italy is a young country in front of what we have as culture in the past, the Roman Empire. I tend to say that I come from the Socratic culture.
Okay, all right.
Actually, where I was born, it was ancient Greece before. So 3,000 years ago, there were the philosopher, that's more, it was more Greek, than Italian. Anyway, the thing is, we've been always traveling, and we'll be always adapting in some way, where we were traveling the world, and this is something that comes from the Italian background. But I can tell you that I have a partner in France, partner in Germany, and we can tell that German, they're really different from the Italians.
Sure.
Good friends from the US, from Scandinavia, from everywhere in the world, including from Asia, and from, I would say, maybe some really few people also here in China, and we have the same vision and the same attitude. I see much more that is the place between the stars where we come from that define us more than at least I try to listen that echo of my personality. So it means that as being brave, disrupting, there is always risk that they might destroy life. But if you overwhelm that risk, you feel unbreakable. That's the thing. So again, you learn a lot from mistakes, from troubles. But when you see that you still stand, you are not afraid of anything. You say, okay, what is this, China? I'm bigger than China. What's next? The United States? Let's grab Los Angeles. Of course, you need to avoid to be, again, arrogant.
You're not saying that with hubris or anything. No, I appreciate it. You have to have that kind of. You have to have.
I think it's important for films, this kind of attitude.
You must have that, especially you're a writer director. A lot of people who are producers, it's the producer hat is more like self-defense, and that's how I first put it on. Exactly.
We are human. So it's normal. When we get hurt, we are afraid, and I think that I do not feel afraid. Indeed, I say, okay, hurt me more, and let's see, what happened, and then you realize that you become stronger. Of course, there is several steps, and there is some levels that is really hard to get in, because it's like a circle. You need to have something, not to be able to do something, and you need to have something to get in the circles. And you try to be able to have that something, For example, now, in new technologies, they need storytelling. They need a narrative way. They can do whatever they want, animation, whatever they want, but they need to be able to tell a story with a different language. So if you learn to do this, you are one of the few having this slice of the cake. And in some way, my tendency has been always this one. Okay, now what is trending? Okay, let's do something completely different, because tomorrow is going to be trending something else, and maybe it's going to be that one. There is also branding strategy related to that. Actually, you American people, you are more, you created this, how to foresee the future. One person once told me, "Oh, you are really good, in branding, because now Beyonce, she's into esotericism, and you are ready for it." It's like, okay, this is kind of things that I'm doing since all my life. I don't know why it's Beyonce, but indeed, this New York vision actually helped me to understand that if you look at the underground, which is something which has always been my passion, in comics, in books, in music, in films, of course.
Sure. Well, that's where the future comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the incubator for whatever the future is.
It's always been. So you are able to know what is going to happen, what is going to be the trend. When we did Eva Braun, we just heard that Lars von Trier announced the Nymphomaniac. Mm-hmm. And that was leading, the market in one direction, which is more erotic art house. And then, of course, 50 Shades of Grey came into
to do the popcorn version.
Same. Yeah. But you see the market, does it work? So say, okay, but we are faster, we need less money, and we sold the film all over the world.
Yeah.
And it was just that, and we did what we wanted. The great things is that we didn't have creative compromises. It was crazy, there is insane things in that film.
You'll have to give me a link. I imagine that was not available online in China.
Well, actually, it was pretty funny, because in the shops where they sell pirate DVDs, they had the one version of Eva Braun with Chinese subtitles, and one of the shop was right in front of an Italian bar, aperitivo.
Okay.
And people were going there to buy, and they were thinking that I was doing just that kind of films. There has been rumors that they created me some problems that I was doing yellow films. I said, no, just that one.
I see.
But it has been interesting, because actually I think it's one of the few that I saw then in the pirate market of the one that I did.
Awesome. So in terms of what you are working on now, I'm curious for you to talk about that. Talk to us about your work in VR, your thoughts about it, and how that's showing up in terms of transforming the old guard, disrupting the old guard. What's been happening in that world?
Well, virtual reality has been a really strange thing, because it just by chance it happened. A producer, she was working at the time for Damai before it was acquired by Alibaba. And they told me we want to acquire VR contents, and the time was the early stage, like almost 3 years ago. I said, "Do you want to shoot something? It's okay if I can do whatever I want." So this is the magic word. He says, yes, it's okay, as long as there is not the usual.
Yeah, you're not crossing into forbidden stuff. Yeah.
And so it's been an interesting exploration. Of course, the thing that I did is basically take some projects of feature films that I still have, or that they're in development, and say, okay, let's do the trailer of the film. Or let's do a teaser, Sometimes they say, okay, show me some visual teasers, visual presentation. They say, okay, I will do it in VR. And actually, the first two episodes, the first two VR experience that I did, they are the scenes from two feature films that I work in. Actually, one is a feature film, and one was a series, science fiction series. Okay. The science fiction series, which started with Come Closer, actually now has become a VR series, so it becomes like that. The other one is keeping on being a feature film with the first real VR experience that I did, the 7 Nights of Thelema, which is kind of a esoteric ritual. But at the moment, it was also the right time because David Lynch was shooting Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And then, they've been presented 2 years ago in Cannes. And in Cannes, the same day, we had the presentation of the 7 Nights of Thelema. And the look has been shot in Modernista in Beijing. So the look, the kind of situation was really similar. So, it was really in the right moment. And of course, for me, was a great experience to explore a new media. And then I realized that there were, in the narrative structure of virtual reality, something that was familiar with the mockumentary style, fake documentary, when we say docufiction, some way, you have to break the fourth wall, So with that kind of style, which has not only been in something that looks like a documentary, but for example, again, Gaspar Noé in Irreversible. There is this Austrian director, his name is Ulrich Seidel, and he already did this kind of style, moving the camera everywhere, so you need to be everywhere with virtual reality. And the same Lars von Trier with Dogma VR. So this thing came in my mind, okay, how can I create a language? And you start to recall, all the things that I know in classic films in that direction. And this led me to create a sort of manifesto, a sort of series of rules, storytelling and production, which I called, for consistency, Dogma VR, because basically it was an evolution of the realism that Dogma 95 from Lars von Trier and Thomas Vinterberg was evangelizing. So in this sense, we create realism not for budget reasons, like it was from the Danish, but just because, we need to recreate something which is closer as possible to virtual reality. Then, because being one of the first, and it seems that my contents is not really shit, I've been getting inside of some circles.
Sure. You're doing good work and you're going places.
Okay. So somebody liked it. And so, I've been in some circle here in Asia, there in the US and in Europe as well. There is already some groups of people, and then been traveling, meeting other people that is doing the same. And this has been also an interesting step to start to tie a relationship with some studios that, of course, if you go to Los Angeles and you say, I'm a filmmaker and I want to make movies, they say, who the fuck are you? But if you go, I'm a filmmaker and I know how to tell a story in virtual reality, they say, oh, this is something that we cannot really...
Exactly, and this is something we were talking about just as we sat down. As we record, I have a pretty good backlog of shows. This will probably come out roughly about a month from when we're recording. But I was just sharing with you that a friend of mine from Los Angeles, speaking about how things are changing, the times are changing, and the studios are finding ways to embrace VR heavily right now in marketing and branding and promotion. David Smith, a cinematographer, a friend of mine, and producer from LA, he's been really a pioneering guy in a lot of ways with different technologies. He's always been pushing the envelope. And
I would love to get in touch with him.
Yeah, I'll connect you guys. And hi, David. I'll send you the link to this too. But he's got one of his companies is this new company, Third Law Productions, and they worked with somebody else and Paramount. and they just released yesterday the very first of the VR 360 VR trailers. Behind the scenes for the new Mission Impossible film, the Mission Impossible film, right? With in conjunction with Paramount, and for Fallout, Mission Impossible Fallout, and it's fantastic. And it's already, I'm not even going to say numbers. I think the post I saw, 1.7 million views in like the first 24 hours. That is what we call viral. That is definitely, that is off to a great start, and it's really cool even just looking on my phone. So imagine with a headset. Exactly. And so the interesting thing is, because there was this hiccup, we were talking off mic before we got going here, and I really want to get your opinion, because you're one of these people who's, I'm not trying to butter your biscuit too much, but you're one of these people who's really not just believing in VR, but you're actually making it work. You're having success. You have a vision for what it can do well and where it can go. And I want to get your thoughts, like, why has it, the initial rollout of the Oculus headsets, everybody was so excited, and then there's consumer level, there's kind of like a dull, the excitement was not met in the market with the reaction that people hoped. But this is the beginning. This is like step one of however many infinite steps we have. So, what this Paramount development's interesting. There's no reason for me to plug David. I just think it's super cool.
It is
how it's being used, and this has just got to be a harbinger for the future here. What's coming down the pipe, and why was it not? Where are we now, and what's coming, basically?
Okay, let me explain. It's not yet an industry, indeed. So, of course, it's a lot of experimentation, and the studios, they educate the audience through this kind of process. They take the budget from the marketing, already Sony, and again, Paramount. We mentioned Ted Shilovitz about my activity with the Red Camera, and Ted is a futurist for Paramount.
He's probably involved in that project. I'm imagining that's his project.
I met him a few weeks ago, and he told me, they've been doing Alien, they've been doing Blade Runner, they've been doing Spider-Man.
He's the guy who hired David, probably.
Yeah. Okay. So, the idea is this. Okay, people need to have a huge IP for getting into virtual reality.
You've got to have a budget.
The idea is that you will be in the same room, in the same space with Tom Cruise. Right. This is the way that they want to approach the people. You will be there with a big star. And then there is every time different approach, because you also see the studio, which is developing, in this case, is a featurette, basically, it's a making of, so they went in, and, I don't want to talk too much about it, but I remember I've been talking with somebody that how does it work for the production? Yeah. I mean, the production itself is part of the shooting of the film,
exactly,
or is part of a different shooting. So there has been some issues in this sense, but I think it's
like finding the time to make it work. Well, you don't have to get into any specific stuff. The touch point for more general audience who's listening, I don't want to lose anybody too much. Basically, I think they're working out the same issues without, I don't even know the specifics of what's in your reference here, but just from doing the publicity photos, basically the marketing part of the studio has always had this fairly antagonistic relationship with the production unit, because the production unit has got to make a project on a certain time schedule, budget. There's demands on the talent. So when you want to get in, let's shoot this interview for behind the scenes, or let's do these publicity photos because we've got to be at this location. Everybody's in the right hair and makeup and wardrobe, and you got to take time away from shooting the actual movie to go shoot pictures that'll be in Vanity Fair in a year.
Yeah.
And
you can imagine.
And the production, the AD and the director are going, "Are you kidding me? You're burning my daylight." And so that's that issue.
Exactly what I was talking about.
For VR, yeah. No, it. I'm just kind of trying to give some context for a more general audience. But so the VR stuff, for it to work, they have to figure out, that's a rabbit hole, but they basically have to, how do we do this but not kill production's time? How do we budget it? Where is it in the budget? Well, we need this extra day or two for this and that and the other.
Correct.
Spread out through the schedule. We need, give us 3 days worth of time, and we'll prep, and that way people drop right in for an hour and they do their bit and they go.
Also think about the rights of the actors.
Oh, that's in the deals.
And I cannot say.
I know that's going to be something that CA, William Morris, Endeavor, they're all going to be.
I cannot say, but it happened. They did the same things for a huge film.
Yeah.
And the the main actor, which is A-list, he forbid. He said, but I sang for the film, not for this thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you cannot use my image, and it was crazy.
And that's like the whole reason they want to do it is because this guy. And again, you'll tell me off mic who this is, but hopefully, but and again, that's an issue for the sake of a more general audience. Is that and this has actually been, since there's this bit of a China focus on the show, of course. These are the kinds of pain points that aren't understood here when you want to interface. This is why most co-productions are doomed to fail, because they just don't understand that the two sides don't understand these things about each other, and that certain things are not flexible. Certain things are absolutely non-negotiable, and all you're doing is wasting your breath and people's time when you want to try to negotiate something that's not going to change, such as likeness rights. And again, especially the bigger the talent, the more control they have over their image. They decide if they're wearing those sunglasses in the shot. They don't care what deal you made or that shirt with the brand. They don't care. They're holding this drink. No, they're not. They get to control that. All that stuff is negotiated. And in most cases, there's a price. And that's why people have agents and lawyers and managers, and they're dealing with this. But you don't just by the way, hold this, do that. No. And so that kind of kills the buzz a little bit about you have to negotiate this. And I'm boring people. Well, we'll move on.
I think there will be trials, and there will be winners, losers in these trials. They will change the agreement. They will update the contracts, and then we understand where is virtual reality in this. But this is yet too early. Now, answering to your question about the Oculus in general, let's make some enemies.
Okay.
So, right. I realized that these things of virtual reality was going to work because I saw that the governments, they wanted to do it. The main governments, United States, China, Russia, because of intelligence reasons. So it's a war thing. Huawei, which is developing also in the direction.
Sure.
They're financed by the army here.
Right.
Again, so everybody wants to be the one, in virtual reality. And so, of course, for doing it, you need to make experimentation. You need to make experimentation. So you have to push people in the entertainment to make this kind of experimentation. But you cannot tell to the people, in 5 years, 10 years maybe, you are going to become rich, because they will not do it. So, a lot of lies has been told, which has been really wrong propaganda. So it means that, next year there will be 200 billions, 700 billions, like this
all
kind
those
of
crazy projections about
numbers.
rolling out Oculus, basically.
Thank God, or maybe this is something related to my Italianity. I didn't believe to that bullshit, so of course it was not possible. Because it's a simple thing. The business will be huge in the moment that the headset will be not anymore, and this I will mention again at Gilevitz, a box on the face. So box on face, it's not really something comfortable to wear now, and it's really complicated because in some cases you have to put the phone inside. It's really complicated. It's not good. It's not worth. I will not spend the money to buy an headset now for the expenses and for the kind of content there is. In this moment is not the right device, but really simple. Let's remember the origins of the mobile phones. Before, they were big as a shoe.
Sure. And it was like a suitcase you carried around. It's my mobile phone.
I remember...
wheeled it around. Battery, like a car battery.
Yeah. And then, now they're basically computers that you can have in your pocket. Yeah. And this computer is coming closer to your face. So we will wear it. And I can tell you, augmented reality will be the first things pushing the people when the technology will be ready. So the technology is not going to be the headset. The headset is just something that... I used to say in my conference, they give you something that looks like glasses. Then they give you something that is the telephone. You're both familiar with two things.
Right.
They're trying to tell you that from the marriage of these two things is going to be something else, which is going to be the smart glasses. There has been already experimentation for that. And of course, now they will be really expensive, as the iPhone was really expensive at the beginning.
Sure.
After a couple of generations, 2 years, 3 years, so let's say in 5 years, they can be in the face of everybody.
Right,
Like
right.
the iPhone or the smartphones, they were in the pocket of everybody. Of course, you know, it's quite more complicated because then you have to change society according to this. People has to have cars so that they can drive by themselves. Otherwise, if you wear the glasses, but society is going. I mean, society is going to change a lot.
You're getting really big picture, but I like it. You can roll with that. If you want to get off Philip K. Dick on me, go right ahead.
This is indeed a really, really next future, and I like this kind of activity because it forces us to see in the future, in the future in 20 years. You know,
Yeah.
We are starting now some projects that they are in the metaverse, which means they are in the social VR world. You know, we are cooperating with the people that made Second Life to build cities, to build a new economy and society. There is a lot of talking about blockchain. Well, blockchain is not just money
Right.
traveling in a different way without banks.
Yeah, medical data and all that. It's, yeah,
Well,
way
blockchain
bigger.
is basically communism made real with a new definition. I mean, it's the concept of communism when Marx couldn't realize what was communism indeed, because the limits were technologic. And so it's not an ideology. It's just the thing that now technology will work exactly as the brain is going to work, you know. So giving information directly from one part to the other. So we are going to vote without anything in between. So we are going to transfer, of course. We are going to transfer something which is not going to be money. So if there will be not any more money, which is the property, which was the problem of capitalism for Marx, this is going to make the society into something that's not going to be communism, but it's going to be something similar, because you will not need to choose if we are the same. You will be forced. No, you will be much more comfortable for your life to go through this kind of process. Then there will be, as always, the underground. So few people that will be using this one simple thing that nobody says because they're afraid. The whole Bitcoin thing, it's not million people, it's 25,000 persons that they become rich.
Yeah.
25,000 are enough to make something that now is worth millions. So this is the way it's going to work society, you know, much more without anything in between. And the internet, as we have been knowing until now, it's just a flat version of what's going to happen in the future. What we are working to build in 20 years is basically the matrix.
It's like the next net or something.
Yeah.
I've never heard anybody. It's
Yeah.
not a bad phrase.
Yeah.
Anyway, can I coin it? Next net. Brendan Davis, 2018. Okay. Yeah.
That's a good.
I'm a pioneer. There'll be something much better than that, but as a concept, I mean, yeah, like you say, yeah, it basically is the Matrix. It's just the idea is that you're signing up for it voluntarily in a way.
But if you think it exists already, I mean, it's something that exists. It's just that it's not. I mean, it's just that people, of course, is used to. Live a different kind of life. Right. So you need to, the problem with new technologies is that you need to put inside of your brain concepts that are not usual. Blockchain is complicated. Virtual reality is complicated. Neural networks are complicated because there's something that we are not used to visualize in our brain. We are used to be analogic.
Right.
We are still analogic.
Right. We're still basically. You said it well. It's flat. The internet it's deep, but it's very. It seems like it's for all the it's very 4D because it goes through time. It records. Exactly. It records in that sense. It records over time and it goes deep. But yeah, there's still this like it's a linear experience.
And, if we learn in time to become digital, as it's digital, everything that we are using now,
right?
But us, it's much more the expression of our subconscious. If we want to say it philosophically, if we want to say it philosophically, we can say it's the expression of our soul. Astral body. But indeed, we as human beings, we are both analogic and digital. Let's say our brain is our digital part, what we have in our subconscious again. So the creating virtual reality contents helps in general to understand this difference, because basically if I create a new world, if I create a new environment which is artificial, I'm doing the same that exists in nature but we cannot perceive. So as you can see, this kind of change that is going to happen is going to affect the life of everybody, because the main governments want it and because you cannot stop technology. This is the thing. This is the story of my last, one of my last VR pieces. It's called Destroy. And it talks about the atomic fiction. The atomic bomb. To explain that this is a technology, but it's not the technology. It was supposed to cure cancer. So the same virtual reality, the same blockchain. Of course there will be people that will try to use it in the wrong way, but at the same time, this is evolution that you cannot stop. Actually, it's an evolution that is bringing us back to what we were in the greatest moment of mankind, which is indeed 3,000-4,000 years ago, when people could be able to travel and to move giant stones just with the power of the mind. And this is not science fiction. This is something that is written in the books that we studied at school. So this is really interesting because we just forgot about it. The destruction of this society came by distraction. We've been just seeing bullshit, sorry for the word,
it's okay.
But it's just thinking about so many things that are not really important, Again, right. It's a distraction, by the media, by whatever it is, by, a really chaotic life, and we forgot. So one of my methods is to look at the future, but remember the past. The most important things that I learn, I can read in the books of the Greek philosophers. Or, again, if we want to go farther, think about the Chinese philosophy. It's so old and everything is there. It's really strong. So we get these pieces from when the people, they were really smart and there were really few ones around, and we can adapt to this new technology, which is not anymore new, actually. Now, virtual reality is something that exists since the 90s, and they use it in therapy. I found, actually, one of my best friends found part of a book by Pasolini that he was talking about the infinite long shot, theoretically. And then that's amazing. This is part of my classes about virtual reality. That the infinite long shot basically is virtual reality. And somebody, that poet and director, he evangelized in the 60s. That's great. We see everything in every time, no? So there will be somebody that is trying to think what is going to be. And it doesn't matter if it's called virtual reality or not. I can tell you something. In my opinion, virtual reality is one of the problems of virtual reality. The name itself doesn't sound really catchy. Right. Films, we are not making any more films. It's digital, but they still, it's a word that it's film, film, movies, it's okay. Virtual reality, experience. Well, since the beginning, I was trying to find a word that is much more familiar. We don't have to talk in this kind of business in the way that people don't understand anything. If you want to go to get the people, you just need to be more direct. They're trying to do it with the content. Now the distribution, they want animation films for families, more than 15 minutes or several episodes. This is what distribution are looking for. There is not so many of that.
Right.
And of course, animation takes a lot of time and is expensive. This is the thing. So again, the things that I'm trying to do is for a different kind of audience. So it's like for the people that likes David Cronenberg, the people that likes science fiction, the people. Because I think that in some way, somebody that might be interested now in virtual reality is somebody that wants to be a futurist, somebody that likes, a fan of the Matrix, for example, a fan of that kind of new form of digital religion. Yeah, this is something that came out in my mind now. But this is, I have in mind some people. It's the people that they are into Anonymous. The people they are the hacker, the crackers.
Yeah.
I think that Mr. Robot has been showing to the world that there is a lot of people like that. And these people, they're going to be. And they're really different from Mark Zuckerberg or other. They are somebody that they have their own ideology. And this ideology is developing more and more. This is going to be the future terrorist in the way they want to show us the idea of terrorism, because there will be the chance to shake the fundament of society the way it is, but not because actually somebody wants, because this is going to happen. Think about when I was talking about the blockchain, and the new system that is going to make money disappear. If money disappear, of course we don't need any more banks. And if we don't need any more banks, the Rothschild family, what are they going to do? I mean, I think they can stay for 2,000 generation.
I think they'll probably they'll be fine, but
I don't think they're going to die starving.
Yeah, no, I think they'll be fine.
So, but indeed, it is a big change that moves countries, that moves culture. That moves thousand cities. Not only, a million people. It's the whole. It's the whole world that is working in this way, and now there will be a change. Now, probably, I'm not talking anymore about entertainment.
Well, that's ultimately why entertainment is to help us get to a conception of understanding why we're here.
Well, as you know, usually it's entertainment that explains what is going to happen then in the rest of the world. And for example, the international film market is changing a lot. This year in the Cannes Film Festival, of course, everybody in the business knows, it's been shrinking. And already some years there has been changes. You meet the sales agents, they say, this year there will be less people. But this year in particular, it was really a problem for. It's been quite tough for the Cannes Film Festival. Why? We are talking since a couple of years about this problem with Netflix, which is the thing that they cannot wait for 3 years, which is insane, that the French government want the films that go to Cannes to wait for going in theaters. They still have the rules of 40 years ago. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I think I was coming from a country from the third world, but that's completely insane, But the reason is also, let me say now that nobody's listening.
The people who are still hanging in are really hanging on every word, and that's okay.
No, I think that Fremont should explain it clearly that the French government, they support the Cannes Film Festival because for them it's a business. So they have to support cinema. They put a lot of effort, they put a lot of money. It's a blessing because France has always been respecting cinema, So it's a blessing, but indeed they have the cinema as the theater itself. So they cannot partner in any way with Netflix, which is a different Netflix and Hulu and whatever it is, which is a different form of distribution. But this is the future. You cannot stop the future. You cannot stop technology. So this is the way that it's going to work. This changed the way of making movies or watching movies. So you cannot really force things in that direction. At the same time, of course, these platforms, they don't give shit about going to the Cannes Film Festival if they have to force them to wait to go in the theaters. Yeah. Why? Yeah. Let's respect the theater. Sure. Let's keep on having theaters. Absolutely. It's really important. Both things can go in.
They can coexist. They do coexist right now.
It happened. So, and as you can see, this made a really huge change because if in Cannes there is no stars, that they don't, I mean, it's like a product from the U.S. This year, there were really way less stars, and there is no stars, there is no glamour, and then a lot of people from professionals, people from the industry, they don't come anymore there, so they don't pay the badge, and
right.
if they don't pay the badge, they or of course,
the economics. It's a giant piece of it exists as a marketing piece for the films, and for the support the market aspect. I mean, the festival supports is PR for obviously everything else.
I would say that the market is the thing.
Exactly, the market is the market is the point, and the festival is the part that's there for the shiny thing, for like the public facing thing. But the market's why the thing exists in the first place.
And it's strange because I don't really understand why. I mean, I understand politically because, of course, then it's also a cultural attitude. But I think that France, they cannot kneel in front of something that might be a decision from the American government because of the relationship that Trump is showing in front of that part of Europe, that's like a strong arm, in some way. So, and it's funny because who got advantage from this? The Venice Film Festival. So the Italians is like, we don't totally give a shit about it. And a few hours ago, a few hours before, we there's been released the selection from Cannes Film Festival, from Venice Film Festival. So let me say again.
Yeah.
So few hours ago we had the selection from Venice Film Festival. No, Barbera has been doing the conference, and it was night here in China. So they took all the films that Cannes cannot took, and they did a really huge deal with the Netflix. They even have the TV show from the Netflix show from Coen Brothers in the festival,
in the Venice Film Festival, right?
Kind of weird because it's not even feature film. It's a reality. So I mean, in some way, and Cannes, and in Cannes, the VR section has been growing, become bigger.
Yeah.
And also the one in Venice became more important. So let's say that this transmedia process is already happening slowly. If you want my opinion, is in some ways happening. I don't want to say it's wrong, but it's not really smart. I mean, they are making decisions from terms of content, in terms of what kind of content they're choosing. They are not really the something that people is in. I mean, they tend to try to find sensitive contents, political stuff, but nobody is going really to be interested in buying a headset for watching a documentary about women soldiers in Syria. With all the due respect,
of course.
The beautiful ladies that made that documentaries, they're really smart, they're really good. I understand why they wanted to do it, because this is, of course, a chance to go to the Sundance Film Festival or whatever, And but of course, if you feel it, do it. But if you go too much in that direction, I think it will be good to feed any kind of audience.
Everything at the appropriate budget. I mean, that should exist. That's not going to sell popcorn in AMC theaters. I mean, it's like there's no reason that can't exist. No. It just means it's a different market. There's an imperative to have multiple platforms. But I think it's really interesting where you are and where things are going. And I think you have this unique combination of skills and traits and experience and philosophical outlook to be somebody who's helping to shape.
Thank you very much. No, I think there is people way smarter than me, and then they get results faster, because they are more industry focused. But again, for me, it's also important to... No, it's not just important. It's not just a decision. I just realized, my target audience looks really a lot like me. So I'm not able to make something too commercial in some way, So I try to do what I'm able to do, and some things actually, probably they're helpful, they're helpful for having one idea which way you can make a story, whatever it is, or which way you can see the industry. But again, it's just my way of seeing things in general. It comes natural, what you want to do. Okay, I can think about, let's make a project which is more in that direction, but it will be always my thing, Again, I was telling one of the last episodes also we've been shooting, it's a love story we have, and it's like Cyrano, and there is animation, so it's something that is going more in the direction of the something commercial. But again, the protagonist, she doesn't have legs. So I always,
so it's got that non-commercial twist.
Yeah. So I cannot make
that's your special contribution.
Yeah, I think, but this is. I mean, I think that the audience is not stupid. When you try to force things in some direction, the audience feel it. You can be really good. You can force the people to go in the theater to watch what you want. This is what you can do, but you cannot.
You can't make them love it. You can't make them like it.
Yeah, you can.
Well, you can shape it.
It depends. It depends. But now I'm thinking about, for example, there is Suicide Squad has been successful, but people didn't really like it. It was just cool the marketing.
Exactly.
That was just something that was powerful.
They're doing the spin-off on the two characters that people actually enjoyed.
Yeah. I mean, it's a strategy of marketing, but you have to spend a lot of money. Yeah. I mean, for the marketing itself, and so we can market everything. So actually, we why not shooting everything we want, and then we market and we push the people in that direction. It depends who is going to be able to choose what is going to be there, in front of the face of the people. And for virtual reality now, it's not yet made the decision. I think they're trying to do what they know. So they know video games, which is an industry itself, and then they know films. So they say, okay, let's do the same as films. But films has been developing in the structure and in the industry in 100 years. So for me, it's like taking a baby and bring him to the university and then now learn. It's not possible. I mean, the baby is virtual reality. I mean, there is not be yet time. It's just that, and I'm pretty sure that things are going to go in a different direction. I think the distribution, they're going to be in the social VR, in the social networks, in spaces from Facebook, or there is like Altspace, or again Sansar, which is the new one from Linda Lab, the guys that did Second Life. That will be the kind of distribution. We are going to walk in the streets, virtual streets, and then we open the doors and we find ourselves in completely another world created by a creator that makes new universes. And it can be live action, it can be, there is so many things that has to be created in this sense. For now, we are in the moment of experimentation. In the US, everybody understood that it's it was just a bubble. I mean, for now, and Europe doesn't exist anymore. So it's China that is going to lead the market, mostly because I had the chance to talk in the Great Hall of the People, the Chinese Parliament, to bring our project. Because the President Xi Jinping has been promoting more and more this new media and AR, VR, artificial intelligence, neuroscience in general. And that's great because we are here and there is support, and hopefully there will be more support for these kind of things in this direction. So this means that also more people is going to come to make business also in entertainment in China, and this is going to help as well the regular film industry, the traditional film industry, which again, as I said before, if the Chinese companies, they get more confidence and hopefully trust in the foreigners, they will succeed, and new things is going to happen here really big. So I'm not saying that it's going to be a new Hollywood. There is nothing new as before, It's going to be something completely different. Because indeed, Hollywood was the great time of cinema. Cinema now is changing, it's becoming something different. So it's the time of the audiovisual era, which is already something quite different. And it's exciting as well, because it's still storytelling. And there's a lot to say, but of course we will need lives to say it. So it's going to be, the future will say, by itself.
Well, I love it. And I think there's always room for storytellers with vision. So.
Yeah, sure. Life is storytelling.
John, thanks a lot, man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And it's an honor.
All right, that's the show this week. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to find out more about Gianluigi and all the cool things he is up to or has done. You can visit the links in the show notes at crazyinagoodway.com. Thanks again for listening. I have a bunch of cool episodes coming up. I'm excited to get these out for you, and I'll see you next week.